Hello, hello, Jordan Chariton live. Status Coup. It is Tuesday. Oh, my dog's barking again. It is Tuesday, January the 23rd, the year 2023, in the United Corporations of America, the New Hampshire Primary Day. I can't lie, I have not really been paying attention to the day to day politics because I am at the mercy of book deadlines, which I'll get into in a minute when more people sign on. So I figured, you know what? I haven't really had the time to pay such close attention because I've been working on finishing this book. So let's just talk and have people call in and kind of have an open mic type of situation. I have a couple clips I want to go through as well, but I wanted to do a call-in show. So hopefully you guys are in a position, guys and gals are in a position where you could call in. We could talk about the primary tonight if you want to. We could talk about the two angles, which I think are important. It, you know, not that there's really much of a chance for Nikki Haley to upset Donald Trump in the GOP primary, but it technically is kind of the last stand, I would say, for the Never Trumpers. So they definitely need Nikki Haley to come within striking distance, I would say. And then on the other side is the so-called gladiators of democracy, the Democratic Party, who have rigged and tried to cancel democracy this whole primary, but particularly in New Hampshire, where Biden's not on the ballot, but doing a secret backdoor write-in campaign and, trying to basically run up the numbers through a writing campaign, but also at the same time pretend, he wasn't trying and didn't care about New Hampshire. So we'll get into all that. Obviously, the carnage continues in Gaza with, last I checked, Hamas rejecting the latest, in my view, inadequate offer from Israel as they continue slaughtering and committing genocide of the Gazan people. I don't want to get the number wrong, but I have read over 30,000 now have died in Gaza. So there is that. The United Auto Workers is holding a conference in D.C. No major news there, but some interesting clips. So there's a lot going on. Sorry, I haven't been able to be on as much. Basically, if you've ever written a book, this is my first real book that I'm writing. I wrote one years ago that I just put online, but this book, essentially, you write it, you get the first draft to the publisher, and then I guess they have different rounds at the publisher of people that go through it. So the copy editor sent me back the edits about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. I've written 26 chapters. And it wasn't like a crazy amount of edits, but enough that I'm having to go back through every chapter. So that's 26 chapters, address the edits they put in. But also at the same time, I'm doing some last minute reporting to try and get, as much new stuff and new information in the book. So I'm addressing edits while rewriting, while also applying new writing, while trying to pay attention to politics, try to make sure we have, enough people to go live and do videos. So it's been pretty busy, but I should be done, fingers crossed, should be done with this final edit by Friday. And then for a little while, I'll be done with the book. The book is coming out in August. So I wish it was coming out earlier, but just happy it's getting out and getting published. I will probably release a short excerpt from the book, maybe around the 10-year anniversary of the Flint water crisis, which is in April. I also have another idea, which I have to check in with a few people to see if it's possible, which would involve the 10-year anniversary of Flint. So a lot going on behind the scenes, but I'm glad we've still been able to have videos and be live. Ron Placone has been doing videos and going live for us, so that's awesome. John Farina has been doing great work on the ground covering protests, particularly the pro-Palestine protests. Lewis is going back to East Palestine. I think, what is that, next week? for the 1-year anniversary of that disaster. So no, we have not forgotten about you, East Palestine. This will be Lewis's 5th reporting trip to East Palestine in the first year of that disaster. He has been following up. He does have like a full-time job outside of Status Coup, but he has not forgotten about East Palestine. We will be back there. The people are sick there. The situation is not fixed. People are getting sicker and sicker. And of course, the government has left them basically to slowly die, just like in Flint. So we're trying to do as much as humanly possible. And thanks to everybody. Like I said, I should be back on air consistently starting in a week. Anyway, smash that like button, share this live stream. I'm going to get to your calls shortly, but I wanted to first go, and I don't know what order you have them through, but I wanted to first go through a couple videos. I'm not going to spend too much time on the New Hampshire primary, but I wanted to go through a couple of videos and give you my thoughts. First one.
They try to steal it again in 2024.
Well, we're going to be watching very closely. I very much appreciate that question because it's a very important question, more important than most people would understand. We have to make sure we have honest, fair, and free elections and strong borders. If we don't have borders and elections, we don't have a country. And you see what's going on with the border. There's never been anything like it on the border. Millions and millions of people are pouring into our country illegally, and many come from prisons. They come from jails. They're terrorists. Nobody's ever seen it. They come from, by the way, I saw a report this morning. They're coming in from mental institutions all over the world. They're pouring in, and it makes sense. Why would somebody running a country where it costs so much money, why would they keep the people? They're dumping them into our country. Mental institutions, jails and prisons, they're coming into our country, and a lot of terrorists are coming in. This is really bad. I heard somebody yesterday say 100% happened to be Sean Hannity. Did you ever hear of Sean Hannity? He said 100% certain that there'll be some horrible acts, terror acts. And that's the answer. It's 100%. It's 100%. The people coming into our country, it's 100% certain. And we have to have fair elections. Thank you for that.
The northern border is a huge deal here. We talk all the time about Eagle Pass, Texas, and what's going on at the southern border. It's a huge issue here at the northern border. What are you hearing from voters?
Bad too. It's getting bad. I mean, it's getting bad. But now it's lightening up because it's so easy. They don't have to come here. It is. You have to watch both borders, and you have to watch fly-ins. You have to watch everything. But the southern border is like nobody's ever seen. But the northern border is bad too. They have done a terrible job. This is one of the worst things. I believe it's one of the worst tragedies ever to befall our country. I really do. I think it's one of the great tragedies in the history of our country, what they've done. Either they're very stupid, which I don't believe they are, or they hate our country. It's very simple. It can be nothing else. They're very stupid or they hate our country to allow millions of people to come into our country.
So I can't say this is the first election since 2016. I haven't really been on the ground. That might change. I might go on the ground later on. I don't know. I don't want to say I am disinterested, honestly, in this election. I don't have time also because I'm working on the book, but I can't say I'm missing New Hampshire. I did cover it in 2016 and 2020. But I do think these comments, we become so numb, I think, to Donald Trump because pretty much every time he speaks, he says things that 10 years ago would have been leading the news cycle. And in many cases, pundits and people would be calling someone to drop out. He says things all the time that a long time ago, well, not so long, like a decade ago, might have been fatal for a candidate to say. But I really think you need to understand, because even though I'm not on the ground now, I know the Trump movement. I know the Trump supporter. I don't want to paint a broad brush because they're not all crazy. There's a lot of people that are normal, good people who just kind of have been hoodwinked by Trump and think he's a real populist and think he really gives a shit about the working class. But they're not hateful. They're not racist. There's plenty of people like that in the Trump movement. But there is a lot of people in the Trump movement that listen to what he's saying. And some of them are not so stable. Some of them are impressionable. And when I say some, I mean more than a little. There's a lot. And Tina covers this well in how, extremism and conspiracy movements she covers. There's a lot of people that listen to this man and actually believe that there is an invasion here, and that there is an invasion that is threatening you and your families, and that almost like an apocalyptic, if you watch The Walking Dead or, The Last of Us or Game of Thrones, and, they are coming for you. They are coming for us. And I'm not saying there is no issue at the border. I'm not saying there are no problems with the influx of undocumented immigrants. I'm not saying it does not put pressure on particularly people in Texas and Arizona. I'm not saying that in some instances there are violent undocumented immigrants, just like there are a lot of violent American citizens. But the stuff he's saying in these statements are going to gin up violence. If he loses the election, which he might, if he drops out, which he might, depending on the criminal cases against him, he is stoking a large portion of his supporters by the comments he's making here that there's a potential terror attack coming through these immigrants, and they're invading, and lock up your children and get the guns like he did in 2020. He is, before the election, already sowing the seed of, we need to have fair elections. We can't trust our elections. And if I win, the elections are safe and secure. But if I lose, bad stuff might happen. Colin, what do you think? Because you're down in the heartland, down in Texas. Is the things he's saying in that statement, do you know some people in Texas that might be getting the wrong idea that he might be stoking up? Not all Republicans, but you've been to Trump events and you live there. I think what he's saying, it's normal at this point. Nobody bats an eye. But he's basically saying, like, hey, there are terrorists invading the country and, watch out.
Yeah, no, especially, well, obviously there's some interesting folks here in Texas, but with the recent, if people have followed it, the ramping up, especially at the border and that whole conflict, that's already its own thing without adding even more fuel to that potential. Like, that could blow up into something more, I think, especially if citizens start feeling like they have to help Texas defend the border from Biden's invading army or what have you.
I just saw a poster of a group driving down to Texas to stop them at the border.
And that's already been an issue of people who followed it, of rogue people going in and doing probably unspeakable things at the border, and there's very little oversight of it because it's Texas and that's how they care about immigrants and stuff. And so now they're getting permission from a previous president essentially to do that.
And bottom line, we got some Trump people that watch. They don't, when I criticize Trump, they, take their bowl and go home. A lot of times they unsubscribe. I don't give a shit. Fuck off. If you're such a snowflake, if you can't listen to other opinions. But at the end of the day, if you genuinely believe that the biggest threat in the United States is undocumented immigrants invading rather than a government that has been purchased by Wall Street, a government, not the Democrats, not the Republicans, both of them, Trump included, by the way. Trump's getting a ton of money from rich people. Trump, when he was president, I know he was going to drain the swamp, literally named the CEO of ExxonMobil as his Secretary of State. You remember that? He lined up his administration with corporate hacks like Rex Tillerson. He put in pharmaceutical executives at the health department. He put in lobbyists throughout his administration. He didn't drain the swamp. He enlarged the swamp. His biggest act was giving tax cuts to corporations and rich people and deregulating for rich people and giving you some crumbs of tax cuts, while 83% of his tax cuts went to the top 1%. This isn't an endorsement of Biden. I'm not a fan of Biden either, but I have to give you some tough medicine here. Trump is not a friend of the worker bee. And by the way, he ain't building the wall. This is his way to get elected, by continuing to demagogue about immigration. But if you think it's the immigrants that are taking your jobs, if you think it's the immigrants that are why you're working two jobs, if you think it's the immigrants that your healthcare costs more, if you think it's the immigrants as to why gas is up, electric is up, insurance is up, rather than your government literally setting policy based on who's donating money to them, rather than a system of legal bribery, rather than a system where corporate America is writing the trade deals that sell your jobs offshore, that Trump, by the way, for most of his career was against. I'll give him credit for that. Trump and the Republican Party have hoodwinked you into taking your eye off the ball and thinking that the real enemy for economic stagnation is undocumented immigrants. It's not. And by the way, we could have immigration reform. We could have had it 20 years ago. We could have had it 10 years ago. We could have it now. But Republicans don't want to sign on to that because it's a perennial campaign issue they run on. Just like we could have had, the Democrats could have enshrined Roe v. Wade into law. They never did. When they had full control of Congress under Obama, they could have. They never did because they want to continue running on abortion. So Republicans want to continue running on, oh, we're being invaded. Democrats want to continue running on, what is Biden and Kamala Harris doing today? Their first campaign event together is on abortion and Roe v. Wade. They could have made it law of the land when they were in office. They didn't. Why? Because it's a campaign issue to fundraise on, to keep flooding people with emails from the DNC and governors and James Carville and all the hacks. Hey, fire. Subject line of the email, urgent, send us your money. Same thing with Republicans. Again, doesn't mean there's no issue with undocumented immigrants. And by the way, none of these people want to talk about the reason that they are flooding to this country. You think it's this fantasy land that, it's America. Everybody wants to come to America. No, we've literally fucked up most of these Central American and South American countries through the drug war, through sanctions, through attempted coups. We have made their countries dangerous and unlivable in many cases, that they're willing to, travel hundreds of miles with their family through water, through forests, through whatever to get here. Next video.
You did change your mind.
Yes.
On the president. Why?
I was a champion for Joe Biden until October 7th. I feel he's disowned us, disenfranchised us with his stance on Gaza.
What do you mean by that?
He's not listening to us. We are asking for a ceasefire at this time. It's a humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. Too many lives are being lost at this time. I was never a single issue voter. In fact, I used to argue with people not to be single issue voters, but for me, this is a deal breaker. Mm-hmm. Way too many lives have been lost.
When you say us, you're Muslim. Is that what
Yes.
you mean? Mm-hmm. You think the Muslim community here feels as you do?
Yes, I think a vast majority of Muslims, Arab Americans, even progressives who I identify myself as a progressive, and many people that I talk to in my circles are not going to be voting for Joe Biden.
So there's a lot of reasons Joe Biden was looking likely to lose. And a lot of things could happen. I've said this for 6 months, maybe more than that. I do not think, and save this video, it's January 23rd. I do not think it's a slam dunk that Donald Trump stays in the race until the general election, even if he wins the Republican nomination. I believe, based on how things look right now, it's very likely that his criminal case will go to trial before the election, or the January 6th criminal case. As far as I could tell, it seems to me that there's enough evidence to convict him. Obviously, you never know because all it takes is one juror, to say not guilty. Or if it's not unanimous, you could have a mistrial. But I grew up in New York. Anyone that knows Donald Trump, I don't know him personally, but knows of Donald Trump, I think he would sooner take himself, through permanent action, if you know what I mean, than go behind bars. Even if you could, for argument's sake, you could say, well, even if he gets convicted, he could appeal. They wouldn't throw a former president in jail. They would let his appeal play out. I don't know if he's even going to gamble and take the chance of getting convicted. And if he's convicted, you would think his lawyers, if he has decent lawyers that are representing him at trial, would say, you're going to lose let's make a deal. And part of that deal would be you can't run for president. Now, that's, obviously just guesswork by me. I do believe that's possible. But I also think it's very likely that Joe Biden, he was already losing the support of young voters. He was already losing the support, particularly of younger Black voters, younger Hispanic voters. He was losing the support of Black men of all ages before October 7th. But October 7th and the absolutely immoral, horrific response by Israel, the slaughter of, at this point, I believe it's over 30,000 Palestinian. Last count was 12,000, I believe, children. I think it's not just Arab Americans he's losing. It's not just younger voters. I think he's losing a lot of voters that might not be strongly political, but just based on human nature, cannot bring themselves to vote for a man that is standing by and writing a blank check to Israel as they commit genocide. And in key states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona, it already looks like he's going to lose because he only beat Trump in 2020 in Georgia and Arizona by less than a point or a point in both of those. I think Biden, he is going to lose. And I think this might be the issue why. And I believe, based on what I know about politics and based on covering 2 campaigns at this point, all over the country, been to Iowa many times, New Hampshire many times, Nevada, all the rest. I believe, and I'm saying this as a Jewish person, okay? So you want to call me anti-Semitic? Go for it. But I'm a Jew. The reality is, a lot of the biggest donors that donate to the Republican Party and the Democratic Party in this country happen to be Jewish. A lot of them are super duper, hands in the air, fist bump, pro-Israel. That's just reality. You could Google it, look at some of the top donors to both parties. They're Jewish. Donald Trump, sorry for you MAGA people here, the reason he moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem is because when he was alive, Sheldon Adelson, who was basically the richest Republican donor, super duper Zionist pro-Israel, gave him $30 million. And Trump promised him, I'll move the embassy as president. And he kept that word. You think Trump deeply cares about Jerusalem being the capital of Israel? Please. So I think that Joe Biden is not going to lift a finger and change his policy, not because he super duper loves Israel, but because to him, I believe he sees it as more of a risk to alienate the donors. I think he sees it as more of a risk to alienate the Democratic Party elite that has been writing his checks for campaigns, for governor's campaigns, for congressional campaigns, for Senate campaigns, been writing checks to the DNC. He does not want to alienate the donors. And I think that is what's truly going on here. Now, I'm not saying every donor is Jewish. Of course not. But a lot of them are. A lot of them are. And even the ones that aren't happen to be super duper pro-Israel. So that's what I think is going on. And besides his age, besides the fact that he abandoned the few promises he made, $15 minimum wage, public option, stop drilling on public lands, $2,000 checks, I think, at the end of the day, it does not look like this campaign by Israel is going to end anytime soon. And young people in particular, I do not think, you could do 10 rallies a week on abortion if you want, if you're Biden and the Democratic Party. But I saw a clip from a woman, I don't know which network it was, who said, of course I care about abortion and, choice for women, but how could I on one, and I'm paraphrasing what she said, but how could I on one end choose to vote for Biden on that end because of that issue for women, but ignore the women being slaughtered in Gaza, ignore that in Gaza, things are so bad right now that women don't have feminine products, for their health needs and are using unsanitary items, when they have their menstrual cycle. I think it's a really bad situation right now for Democrats. And I think tonight will be interesting because Biden's not on the ballot, but there's the whole write-in campaign for him. I think Marianne Williamson and Dean Phillips might do better than people think. I think Marianne Williamson and Dean Phillips might do better than people think. I think Biden will win even with a write-in campaign, but I think both of them are going to do better than people think or even the polls show. So we'll see. All right, let's start the call in. Please, super chats are really appreciated. We have not been on the ground, in the last 2 weeks, but John has been doing all the protests, covering the pro-Palestinian protests. I think he's covered at least 15 already in New York, in DC. It costs a lot of money. Obviously, we got to pay him, send it back and forth. So super chats are appreciated. Please, if you can, sign up as a member. Like I said, we're sending Lewis back to East Palestine. John has been covering things on the ground. I'll be back on the road once I finish the book. And call in. We could talk about the primary today. If you have questions about my book, comments, questions, concerns about anything else, now's the time. Let's set it up. I'm clicking the ready button. Oh, the show session has ended. Okay, so get started. Get started. My shows, host a show, even start a show. Connect the show. Okay. All right. So I need to share my screen. Is that the one you need, Colin? Oh, you can't see it.
You haven't shared it yet.
Hold on. God damn it. Technology. 1 second. What? Is that the one you need?
Yeah.
Okay. And Colin will put up the number. If you don't be shy, call in. All right. Let's see what we got here. And while I'm waiting for the first caller, when you call, make sure you don't have me on speakerphone or something like that, that you're talking into, a clear connection, yada, yada, yada. While I'm talking about that, tomorrow, Ron will be hosting. I believe John is going to be covering protests on Thursday and Friday. And we have some other things in the background that we're working on that I'm excited to talk about soon. So, all right. So we got some calls. U.S. elections from a Latin American perspective. All right. Raven. Hey there.
Jordan, you shared the wrong screen also.
Oh, hold on.
You need to do the share tab where it shares the audio also, I realize. You should push the...
Okay. God damn it. Share. That one?
There we go. Yeah.
Okay. Go on.
Can I be heard?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I don't know if you heard the introduction. Should I do it again or?
Yeah, so you are calling from Latin America and you are very focused on drug policy, correct?
Yeah, I'm a human rights activist.
Mm-hmm.
So let me give you a premise and perhaps we can talk in that sense. For many of us in Latin America, Donald Trump is to the United States what Hugo Chavez was to Venezuela or is to Venezuela, what Ortega is to Nicaragua, or what Pinochet was to Chile in history. I don't know if you What would your perspective be on that premise?
You're saying that to a lot of people in Latin America, Donald Trump is like, say those names again.
Hugo Chavez to Venezuela, Daniel Ortega to Nicaragua, Pinochet to Chile, Videla to Argentina, Fidel Castro to Cuba, and we can go on.
I have never heard Donald Trump compared to Fidel Castro, so you'll have to enlighten me there.
So, in very simple terms, what we see that's happening in the United States, particularly after with the election of Donald Trump, is that we see United States catching up to our own way of history. We have seen the populists, either from the left or the right, or from a military background, to come into power. We know what that creates and those conditions generate in each of our countries that have happened. Granted that a lot of those situations that have happened in Latin America since the end of the war or the Second World War were also influenced and manipulated in many situations because of United States foreign policy. So not only do we have to add our own bad decisions in regards of our political structures, but add that to the fact of the United States interfering into our issues.
Yes.
So Hugo Chavez, I'll give you an example. My heritage is Costa Rican. I was born in Costa Rica. My whole heritage is from that little country in Latin America. But because of my life and because of my father, he was Venezuelan. He was an ambassador to Venezuela to Washington, D.C. So my other part of the history is also Venezuelan. So I know a lot of the history of this region, and particularly of those two countries. So Hugo Chavez and the figure of Hugo Chavez is very, very similar to how Trump and his rhetoric functions. He's a nationalist, demagogue who speaks to a base who only wants to hear a specific pseudo-reality and really doesn't go into depth on those realities and why those realities are happening, but uses those situations to then push forward agendas of xenophobia, of different fears that this bases have.
Yeah,
That's what happened in Venezuela.
But where I would differ with you, and by the way, Trump tried to do a coup in Venezuela, as I'm sure you know, it failed. But where I would differ with you, maybe in rhetorical style and personality, Fidel Castro and the others you mentioned had some kind of strongman rhetoric, but on policy, they actually tried to help their people. Fidel Castro, healthcare programs, programs for poor farmers, education. Donald Trump has done none of those things here. In fact, he's and the Republican Party have tried to cut a lot of programs, whether it be food, education. So I don't really think maybe people that or internationally see similarities in the way they carried themselves, but in terms of what they actually did or stood for, I do not see those similarities whatsoever.
And that's why it's interesting, because perhaps from the optic of us, we do see those similarities in the sense that it's the populists to promise change because of the perceived erosion of that nationalist sense.
Right.
So it's the guy that comes out and says, "I'll fix everything that is wrong because we have to drain the swamp because it's the hegemony of the elite who controls us and they want to shut us down. I will come and clean." And when they go into power, they don't clean anything, and they become even worse than those elites that they accused of corruption, etc., etc.
Right.
So in that sense, the comparison that one makes, you hear the speeches of Daniel Ortega, you hear the speeches of today Maduro, back in the day Chavez, or you hear the speeches of Canel Diaz, who substituted then the Castros in power, or you hear the speeches of Milei right now in Argentina, and it's exactly the same speech. What happens is adjusted to the particular nation here in this continent, America. So we've seen that happening a lot. Hell, I wouldn't even go into the realities of Ecuador or Peru, but then Trump is that type of figure. And consider that you could say, well, yeah, I mean, Pinochet built a whole bunch of roads, but in the same time that he built a whole bunch of roads, he maintained his people, persecuted, killing, disappearing, etc. Trump, perhaps because of how the executive power is designed in the United States and how the division of power works, never reached that point. But I have no doubt that he wants to reach that point.
Right.
Willingly or unwillingly.
Yeah. I hear you. Thank you for your call. I got a couple other callers, so I got to take more people, but
Sure.
It's good to get an international perspective. I'm going to take this.
Thank you for taking me.
Absolutely.
Have a good day.
I am going to take Cheryl. You're up.
Hello,
Hello.
I'm here. On Gaza, I had the thought that Gaza should be treated as in what's happened in Nunavut. In Nunavut, they had separated from Canada and had made their own place in their own lands, and have created their own laws and created their own way that they're going to survive on this planet. So maybe that's an option that could be looked at in the way that they had done it.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have any beef with Russia. They don't have any beef with Canada. They just simply want to exist.
Right.
And that's what they're doing. There's no war in Nunavut.
Right.
They are peaceful people. No one's got a gun against their head just because they want to catch seal or go fishing or have their boats and all those things.
Right. I think also a big part of why this issue basically seems to is gonna go on forever and ever until something dramatically changes, is you have religious fanatics involved in Israel. I mean, in many cases, the prime ministers and the leaders of Israel, whether they really believe it or not, believe God gave them the land, and they believe that they're entitled to this whole thing. Go ahead.
Jordan, I understood, but the fact is that to deny people the rights for their food, to not give them the rights for fishing their food, for having the air to breathe, all these other basic human life things, that's what's at issue.
Yes.
And if you take out the religion part of it, then you look at the basic human rights of people. And I think that should be more addressed rather than looking at the whole religious aspect of it.
And tell people who don't know about in Canada what you referenced, because most people probably don't know what you're talking about the area that separated.
None of it is high up in the territories up in Canada, formerly Canada. And basically what they've done is to decide to separate from Canada. And they have their own fishing rights. They have their own laws. They protect their own selves until they can't, and then they can call in Canada and say, hey, come and help us. And obviously Canada would. They're very close to where Russia is on the map, if you go and look at the map. And, they could pose themselves in a problem there. They have what is called the, what's it called? It's a passageway between the Europe and what is the territories. And that river is very, very important to when the whole ice thing melts away and is gone. that river weapons will be used as international trade for Canada, U.S., and the rest of the world. So that's what they're looking at in the future. And Russia would clearly, have their eyes on that passage.
Right.
United States would clearly have their eyes on that passage. And Canada is saying, that it's not about us. This is our waters, and this is none of us waters, and we have the right to protect those waters. And I think that's going to be something that's coming up in the future. And Gaza has those same kind of problems.
Yeah.
They have an international water that Russia is trying to get at, trying to export their own stuff through there. It would be no different argument. It's just in the place of where things are. You get the drift.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Thanks for calling. I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. Up next, I don't know. Norman? You there?
I'm not Norman.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
I'm Peace Dove. Hi, Jordan. I just wanted to know and let you know, first of all, I've been with you since you started and have loved Status Coup, and I appreciate you. I wish I had $1 million to send you.
I wish you did too.
One of my my biggest thing is that every time everybody interviews Trump, no matter where he is, and no one has asked him, not once have I ever heard anybody ask him about what he's going to do about the Israeli genocide in Gaza.
That's a good point.
I don't know. I don't know if you have anybody. I know you have one of your guys that's been up there, and everybody, being interviewed about being, MAGA, representatives up there. But every time they talk to him about all stupid questions, but nobody's asking the people, what's your take on Israel? What is your idea of what we should do in Gaza? Can we get Trump to answer one of them damn questions? Just let me know what you're going to do on Israel.
Right. Well, I think, there's two parts to that. Number one, I think we know what his answer would be, which would be a lot of bullshit and, we'll make a deal. We'll make the best deal, ever known to man, blah, 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 blah. Biden's too sleepy. He can't make a deal. But so I don't think he'd give like a specific answer other than we'll make an amazing deal. I think in practice, if he was president now, pretty much the exact same thing would be happening. I don't think he would do anything different than Biden, only I think he would go further than Biden. Biden is kind of, sort of, said Israel's bombing is disproportionate, but is continuing to write blank checks and, give them whatever they want. I think Trump would actually go further than that and just basically, say a lot of the people being killed are terrorists, in Gaza, even though that's not true. I think he would basically, stoke up it's Hamas's fault. I think he would rewrite history and, say Israel's tried to give them a country over and over again. And I think he'd continue supplying, Israel with whatever weapons they want. And I think he'd brag about it and say, see how much money we're making here by selling weapons. But the fact that I think the worst part is no journalists are asking him, which shows you where our quote unquote journalist system is. Because the journalists that cover campaigns, and I try not to watch that much, but I've been there. I've covered both campaigns on the road, so I've seen it up close. They're not interested in what these people are actually going to do for the country. All these nerds from CNN and MSNBC and Fox and the New York Times, all they're interested in is the rat race and the horse race and who's up and who's down and who's going to drop out and who's going to get this donor. And they just care about like the palace theater of it all, if you know what I mean. They don't actually care about the policies, how it's going to affect poor people in America or people fleeing in Gaza, because most of the journalists covering these campaigns are completely disconnected, both from the struggling people in America and the people in Gaza or other war-torn countries. So that's why they're not asking, because frankly, I don't really think they give a shit what Trump is going to do or Biden's going to do. But it is a crime that, to me, I mean, listen, status coup mostly over our 5 years. I wish I had more money and more reporters to cover international things. I don't. But we mostly cover what's going on here. But if you notice, we've been covering this a lot because how could you ignore it? It's the biggest story going on in the world right now. But the fact that no journalists are even asking Trump, I haven't really seen them asking Nikki Haley many questions about it. The other Republicans when they were in the race, I genuinely think it's because they just don't care. They don't care. If you watch the coverage, I've watched a little bit of CNN and MSNBC today. It's all about they're political nerds and they're excited because it's an election and, who's going to win, who's going to drop out, what the donors are going to do, what the narrative is. So they don't really care about the real life consequences of genocide, just like they don't care about the genocide that's been going on in Flint for 10 years, which is the Flint water. Just like they don't care about the Native Americans who have been experiencing just because you're not seeing bombs and, missiles in America doesn't mean there's not genocide going on. Native Americans don't have electricity and clean water all over this country. Poor Black, poor Hispanic people are living in horrible conditions in many places. Poor white people, frankly, are living in horrible conditions in a lot of part of the country. But yeah, I can't lie and say I miss the campaign trail because I know the campaign trail is just theater and shitty journalists just happy to have happy to have their news outlets putting them up at a hotel where they're close to a bar.
Yeah. Well, on that note, the only thing I've got left to say is free Assange, free
Yes.
Assange, free Assange.
Yes. And by the
Thank you so much.
by the way, to these people saying, oh, Trump's going to drain the swamp and Trump is, going to shuffle things around. Trump's the one that prosecuted Julian Assange. Let's not forget that. I don't have a lot of nice things.
Exactly.
I don't have a lot of nice things to say about Obama, but at least he was smart enough not to go after Julian Assange. Trump and his administration are the ones that prosecuted Julian Assange. Anyway.
Yeah, and then says we love WikiLeaks.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for calling. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you and everybody on Status Coup. Keep going and support Code Pink too. Thank you.
There you go. Thank you. All right. It doesn't always say people's names, so I'm sorry if I get your name wrong. I think this is Santiago. Hello? You there, Santiago? All right. I don't hear you, so I'll go to Dimitri.
Hey, Jordan.
Hey there.
Definitely a pleasure to get on with you. Been following you since the COVID outbreak, since I had some time to get off of, get out of work for a little bit. Clearwater Beach native, worked on the beach for so many years.
I went to college down there.
I did not know that, sir.
I went to college at University of Tampa.
I know where it is, UT.
Yeah. So I've spent a couple days of my life down in Clearwater. I don't remember many of them, but fun time.
I used to be employed off of Franklin Street, just a couple of blocks from you.
There you go.
It used to be Chase Manhattan Bank, and then they switched. They got bought out. But anywho, long-time listener, respect what you do. Definitely appreciate you. You make me feel normal because the circles that I run with, or at least the people that I hang around with, we don't have these conversations because they are completely brainwashed, at least in my opinion.
A lot of people I know too. Yep.
So, I'm looked at, and I've learned over the years to keep my political views and my world views to myself because I'd rather my family members approach me so I know which ones not to delve deep into and take them seriously than not know.
Yeah, I hear you.
But anywho, Oh, you know what? I mean, there's so much misinformation right out there with what's going on over in the Middle East. And I mean, it's coming from us at all sides. And yes, that's one topic, but the other topic's what's happening over here. I mean, it just seems like the mainstream media, they either pick one side or the other.
Yeah.
And independent media, you get slaughtered. You got you're getting it from both sides.
You know, it's interesting. I was talking to somebody that I know who works at Sirius Radio, which Sirius XM, you have to pay for it. And I got like a $5 trial, like a $5 a month trial, because there was a station I wanted to listen to. So I turned on the political channels, and I got to tell you, I mean, CNN, MSNBC are dreadful enough. Talk radio in this country, oh my God, there's nothing worse. I said to my friend who works at Sirius, I said, I don't know which is worse, like the conservative channel, the progressive channel, air quotes progressive, which is just basically like MSNBC light on the radio. There is no actual like left wing or working class channel. There's no like labor channel. There's no actual left wing channel. The conservative channel might as well just be like Fox on the radio. It's just, there is no actual media for working class other than, I would say, us, a couple others, even independent media, frankly. In a lot of cases, independent media these days has just become, for many years, just like a fucking nonstop echo chamber. Democrats bad. And they are, but there's not much else offered, So yeah, I am totally with what you're saying.
With respect to your channel, I'm not going to name the other channels I listen to, but I subscribe to independent media because I don't like to be on the bully pulpit and be told what to think, how to think, and how high to jump at their command.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually one of the.
And I thank you so much.
Oh, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Go continue.
No, I was going to say.
you please.
I was going to say one of the things I do, and Colin could attest to this because we've traveled together. One of the first things I do, like when I get the rent-a-car, is I tell him, "Hey, Google what the news radio is, wherever I am, in the country, because I want to listen to, each city and state have their own like."
Well, they say, I forget. I think it was Sun Tzu. Know your enemy.
Yeah, and I want to listen to, because in a lot of cases, this is where the misinformation is coming. I mean, I remember when I was in Standing Rock, the few times like I drove an hour away from the camp into Bismarck, and I turn on like local conservative radio in North Dakota, and it was like listening to an alternative universe. And the same thing can be said for, I mean, I've been in more hippy dippy liberal places, and you turn on talk radio, and it's super duper like, MSNBC resistance wine mom radio. And it's very disheartening because none of what I hear or see reflects what I'm actually seeing on the ground. None of what I hear and see in the media reflects the people that I talk to, the people that I talk to about the economy, the people that I talk to about homelessness, the people that I talk to about environmental issues, about poisoning, about lead or contaminants in their water, about air pollution, about, for example, I haven't had a time to do the story because I'm working on my book on deadline, but Amazon in Albany has had 2 gas leaks in 2 weeks where they've basically refused to evacuate their workers. You hear that on MSNBC, CNN, New York Times, talk radio? Fuck no, you only hear it here. So I pitched my friend who works at Sirius. I said, what do you think the odds are that you could get me on a call with like a senior vice president at Sirius to pitch even a weekly Status Coup show? And they said, I could try, but there's a better chance of me getting a 6-pack. This was my friend talking, of them giving someone like you an hour on radio. Because what they don't want is anybody basically not picking a team and calling them all corrupt, both sides. This is a team sports kind of game.
And I'm going to say this, and I'm not plugging myself. I do my own thing, and I have my own channel, which I'm not going to bring up.
What are you talking about? Plug yourself, man. Tell people your channel.
I'm on OBF, Opinion But Facts.
OBS, Opinion But Facts.
But, you know, I listen to, I consume myself. Yes, I have to filter myself through the mainstream media. And then I have to put myself through a strainer so I don't get myself worked up into an upheaval.
Yeah.
And because it's really disheartening when I see all of these comments from people who just don't know. And it's like, for example, right? If you're a trained chef and someone is trying to tell you how to make a souffle without having any knowledge on how to make a souffle, you could pick it out within the first 2 ingredients.
Yeah.
And that's what I go through on the daily, and it's nerve-wracking, and I feel like I'm surrounded by incompetent, ignorant people.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry for you know, because I try to reserve judgment, but this is the world that I live in, especially living in Florida in the Deep South.
And it also kind of becomes, at a certain point, kind of exacerbating, and you get mentally exhausted dealing with it. I mean, I'll give you an example in my life. I haven't hit it. I love my mother. I love my father. I love my family, but they're very pro-Israel. Before this happened on October 7th, I kind of had it down to an art and science. I just stopped talking to my dad and them about Israel, because what was the point? I'm not, we're not going to agree, and let's focus on our, the rest of our relationship, them enjoying my daughter and being good grandparents and, yada, yada. But obviously, like, this has caused a lot of tension between us because, they don't watch Status Coup religiously, but they've seen our coverage and they don't like it. My mom in particular has called me and given me a tongue lashing or two, and how disappointed she is in me and yada, yada, yada. And it's kind of like, I've resisted yelling at her or snapping at her, but there was one moment where I kind of just had enough and said, like, you're just ignorant. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And that's coming from a place of love. You've been indoctrinated by a bunch of bullshit.
Big mistake.
Yeah.
Because I did the same thing on the podcast that I do. And I'll just put it out there real quick. This is, I have a black mother, black Cuban, and a Greek father. So obviously I came out somewhere in the middle.
Right.
And I grew up in the deep South. So I experienced racism, and I became an advocate early in my high school days, and carried that, but demographically where I lived, I could not bring too much attention to me because it would end up in consequences and repercussions.
Yeah.
And this was before social media. I graduated in 91. So, I'm calling out what I see, but then I was, I'll put it to you like this. The principal of my high school, which I was a state wrestling champ, when I would finish wrestling practice, because my father was in another country at the time, they were separated. My mom's working, at a bank, and she couldn't come pick me up. I'm 7 miles away from my house.
Wow.
The principal had a big bumper sticker, National Goat Herders Association. And he would, everyone knew me. He's like, yeah, I'll give you a ride home, or at least half a ride home, but you have to sit in the back bed of the pickup truck.
Really?
And Vince Thompson, still remember his name because, that was the first and only time I took a ride from him. I'd rather walk or run the whole way home as opposed to make me sit in the back.
Why?
There
was no front seat?
Well, there was, but he told me to sit in the back.
Wow.
So there's bales of hay in his pickup truck and feces.
Oh, my God.
And I'm sitting in the back of his pickup truck.
That's disgusting.
And we're talking 1991. So, yeah, you know what? I really get what you're saying. I appreciate your message. I have great respect for you because what you're doing to tell the truth is not easy. And for like every person that you have coming on here, you got 10 coming against you.
Yep. That's
So
true.
much love, respect. Hopefully we could collaborate sometime in the future. If not, you know what? I'm still a long-time listener. I still follow you, and I won't even bring up my channel because you know what you do, I respect. And I try to keep it lighthearted on my channel. We talk politics, we talk sports, we talk, social events, because I try to make people laugh as well. Because if I don't laugh, I got to cry.
Yeah, I hear you.
Much love, Jordan, and thank you so much for actually taking my call. God bless you, your family, and please keep doing what you do. I love you.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for the call. And
yes, sir.
Man, that's a terrible thing you had to go through. I'm glad you never have to deal with that asshole again. I'll take that.
Well, you got. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Ethan. You there, Ethan?
Yes, sir.
Hey there.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Sorry, you kind of caught me off guard. I didn't think you were going to get to me. I was doing some dishes.
No problem.
But yeah, so I recently, I haven't talked to you in a while. I don't know if you remember me or not.
I do. You were running in Kentucky, right?
Yes. Yeah, I ran for Congress against Thomas Massey in 2022 as an independent.
Yep.
And I ended up getting like over 10,000 votes was like skin of my teeth, 4% of the vote almost. So
pretty impressive against that's quite a machine, Tom Massey.
Oh yeah, considering I barely had any funding whatsoever. I paid pretty much everything out of pocket, and I had a couple of helpers, and that was it.
Yeah.
But so I ended up moving across the river. So I live in Ohio now, and East Palestine is about, I think, 2.5 hours, 3 hours away from here. But you know, the river system and the springs and all that's all connected, especially that close to, that's not that far. And to me, it just really highlighted the further arguments for nationalizing certain industries like rail.
You're damn right.
Right. I mean, because that's just perfect example of, the neoliberal policies of deregulate and defund and privatize, and then those corners are cut, and then the accidents happen, and then of course there's no accountability
through that East Palestine situation. I learned, I had no idea how many derailments there are in this country a day, and I'm willing to bet there's a lot of them that do not get any attention, and plenty of shit spills or leaks.
Oh, for sure.
Into water.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, after that happened, since the lens was on it after that incident, there people started noticing, hey, there's these other things these other derailments, and they're just a commonplace. But when people are looking at it, it seems like there's more things going on than usual. But that's just because everyone's looking at it. Those things are always happening, and they're definitely dangerous. But I mean, that was something I campaigned. One of my big tiers of my campaigns that I really wanted to focus on, and it's something I'm still trying to fight for, and I'm really trying to focus now. I'm kind of over electoral politics, but still trying to do stuff to put pressure on utility companies like Duke Energy is the big one here, and they're just gouging people just so hardcore. And that's something when it comes to working class that transcends, the partisan working class. Depending on how you put it, most people support the idea of nationalizing utility companies into the public ownership by working class people.
We've actually had the problem is we've had a reverse nationalization in this country for 50 years, where the corporations have nationalized our government by buying it. if you know what I mean.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I say nationalization, I mean
Oh,
into the public ownership of the working class, not some cronies. Like,
yeah.
because you'll see nationalization. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing.
Right.
When it's being nationalized into,
yeah, like
other countries
when
have done that, and it's like
when I hear, let's make social media public utilities and have the government regulate it. Well, the government technically regulates banks. How's that working out for you?
right.
Yeah.
But one major point I wanted to make while we were talking is, for renewable energy to be effective and work, it really has to be geospatially sound. And by that, I mean, there has to be, it has to fit, the technology has to fit the certain landscape that it's connected to. Like a good example of this is in my place where I live now. I rent a house. I'm out in the country, and I don't have electric heat. My heat comes from propane and firewood. And me being a forestry guy, firewood's not that big of an issue, even though for other people, even that's out through the roof. The cost of firewood is insane. But people don't realize there's a lot of people that still heat their homes with firewood in the wintertime. And the propane is insanely overpriced. So, but see, I've got a creek running through my backyard that is powerful enough that I checked this out, that if I had an extra $6,000, I could install a micro hydro turbine into this creek and would mostly power my house, all the utilities from that.
Wow.
And that's the thing, and that's a very common thing. People don't realize how the proximity to water that they live. Like around here, lots of people live close to the river, but the hydroelectric's not really being utilized. And Duke Energy has gone after people who have done things like, installed renewable energy type systems to their house, and then they're making so much excess energy that you would think, some utility companies would try to buy that back, but Duke Energy actually went after people and tried to penalize them for that.
It's a big cartel, whether it's Duke Energy or Florida, Power and Light, or PG&E. They're all fucking crooks.
Right.
What's the one in Virginia that was Dominion Energy basically owns. So yeah, it's a major problem.
Yeah, PG&E out on the West Coast, because I used to live out there, and I still work out there as a wildland firefighter during fire season, and they that company has been responsible for almost all of the major catastrophic wildfires over the past 5 to 6 years, or at least a big some of the biggest ones, like the Carr Fire, I think was their result of some of their faulty transformers, and there was the Paradise Fire, which was catastrophic. And they just walk away scot-free from that. And there's, again, no accountability.
Right.
No accountability for East Palestine. No accountability for PG&E. So.
Yep. Hey, listen.
It's a major.
I don't want to. I don't want to cut you off, but my wife is calling me to start to take over with my daughter. So.
Right. Well, congratulations on the family and the new book and stuff. And
thank you very much.
We're talking to you again.
And,
yeah,
thank you. And I will give you an update. Let me hang up here. I'll do a longer call session next time. Maybe we'll do a full hour called in. It actually is good. It's like my therapy to talk to you folks. But on the book update, it will be out in August. I will probably be releasing a short excerpt in April. For the 10-year anniversary. I will be back in Flint for the 10-year anniversary, possibly before that. I have an idea for the 10-year anniversary. I just have to see if I could get some people on board with it. But the book, if you missed my update, is going to be called We the Poisoned, exposing the Flint water cover-up and the poisoning of 100,000 Americans. So kind of a play off of We the People, We the Poison. So I hope you like that. Right now, the book publisher is sending me kind of some examples of book covers for me to take a look at. But I'm really excited about the book title. Why I haven't been live or doing as many videos is because my deadline to submit the edits, because I submitted the book at the end of last year, and then they get back to you with their edits. So they submitted to me their edits, which wasn't that bad. They haven't tried to butcher it or anything like that. A week or so ago. So I've been going through 26 chapters and addressing their edits and adding stuff. And any of you who have written a book, it's a full-time job. So I've been very busy with that. I am going to be finishing that by Friday is the deadline. And after that, I can't really add anything new because then it goes to press and I don't know the whole process, but it takes a while. So after Friday, I'll be back, with my normal schedule. Tomorrow, Ron will be live, so we'll definitely have reaction to the New Hampshire primary, among other things. John is going to be covering some other protests this week. Like I said, Lewis is going back to East Palestine for the 1-year anniversary. That is, when's he going? I think he's going on the 28th, so it might be next week. Yeah, he'll be back in East Palestine. So that's his 5th trip to East Palestine in a year. So if you can, a lot of you already support us. If you haven't signed up yet, please sign up as a member. We do not take money from the banks, the fossil fuckers, big pharma, big real estate, Silicon Valley, the military industrial complex. Our funding comes from you. And that funding helps us afford the flights, the rent-a-car, hotel, the equipment, all of it. And paying people, obviously, because I got to pay people. So please consider signing up. StatusCoup.com/join. You could join us for $5 to $10 a month. I try not to send you fundraising emails every day. We try not to send you a gazillion fundraising emails. We might have to send a couple more than usual to kind of get membership going again. But please sign up. You might think it's nothing, but $5 to $10 a month really matters. The more people that sign up, and that means the more consistent money is coming in for us to cover more things on the ground. It is very hard to cover things around the country, to pay reporters, producers, camera people, if you don't have consistent funding coming in. So please, StatusCoup.com/join. Thank you, Denise. $10. It's reasonable for desperate people who have walked across the continent in order to try to earn a safer life, might lose their minds and act up when they get here and are met by ignorance and guns. I agree. Adria, been a Status Coup member for 10 months. I think a lot more voters will sit this one out. Particularly on the Democratic side, I think a lot more voters will sit this one out, particularly voters that voted for Biden in 2020. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Colin, behind the scenes. We'll see you back here tomorrow.